Hi, welcome back to Community Focus here on Channel 6 TV. Glad you could join us tonight. I'm Kenny Fogle, your host, and we're going to be talking a little bit about crime. And basically, we brought the biggest, one of the biggest crime fighters in Nelson County in the area, and here the Commonwealth Attorney, Terry Gohagan. And if there's any crime that goes through this area, you probably, I'm not going to say you've seen it.
Well, eventually it gets to our office if it's a felony. If it's in Nelson County, LaRue County, or Hart County, we're the Commonwealth attorneys for the 10th Circuit, which includes those three counties. So if it's a felony and it's going to go forward in the court system, it comes to the grand jury for us to present to the grand jury and then see if it goes any further.
Now, I know that obviously a lot of the stuff you do is black and white legal, but a lot of it you see that you probably, you know the root cause of it. I mean, whether it's drugs, whether it's gun violence, what is it that you see? Is there a root cause, or is it just a combination of many things?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. Obviously, we are seeing more, I think, more drug crimes and more drug property crimes than we have sometimes in the past. And we're seeing lately, in our county at least, obviously more violent crimes than we've had in the past, and I really don't know the reason for that. I mean, if we did, we would sure be trying to get to the bottom of it. But, and really the violent crime rate locally probably has not been as bad as it was back in the late 70s and 80s. We had a lot of violent crime back then, and we still have several unsolved homicide cases from them that we're still working on. And, you know, there's several cold cases that are still being worked from even that long ago. But there is, obviously throughout history, there's been certain crimes that have always happened and are probably always going to be happening. But there are certain things lately. I think the drug culture, for whatever reason, has gotten a little worse lately with painkillers and with heroin. And a lot of the property crime that you see, and a lot of it's fairly petty crimes of stealing from stores or stealing from ordinary citizens, is just to fuel the drug crimes.
Well, I know you're involved in several relative highly profile crimes in Nelson County right now, and when you're in court, you can't really give a lot of your opinion on what's going on. I know that you probably have an opinion on some of them, and some of them you can't talk about, obviously, because they're still pending. But right now going on now, I'll ask your opinion here. I mean, we're not in court, but right now I know they're having a sit-in in Washington, D.C. The Congress is having a sit-in today on gun control. Do you see that as even a viable option in this area?
Well, I just happened to see at lunchtime that obviously the Democrats, predominantly Democrats in the House, were starting to sit in. I don't know what's happened since that time. And you know, the gun control issue has obviously flares up every time there's a mass shooting, and I don't think anybody else knows the answer to that. But there's a lot of things I think to consider about it, and certainly if any time that you have a mass shooting where, as in Newtown, there were 2 rooms full of first graders killed and 6 of the teachers, along with the shooter's mother and himself. And recently in Orlando, when you have 49 people killed, it's time to start looking at what is causing that and try to find an answer to it. And I think that I applaud the Congress for finally doing that. And if I could, I guess, equate one thing to what my sister suggested recently. If you want to get an answer to the problem of gun violence, the first place that we should start to get a quick answer, it reminds me of something Warren Buffett said, but anyway, my sister said the first thing to do is take away the armed guards in Congress and take away the metal detectors they walk through and see how soon it gets that problem gets resolved. And I would say that's a pretty good suggestion. And it's interesting that it's been reported, I don't know if it's true or not, that Trump has said that there wouldn't be any guns allowed at the Republican convention. Now, if guns make you safer, why did they decide not to have guns at the Republican convention? I don't know.
I don't know either. Like I said, I know that's been an ongoing issue for as long as I can remember. I know about a few years ago when the assault rifle ban was taken off, when everything sort of started flowing in a different direction. But you got the battle between everybody. I don't know if it's an interpretation or what, but the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment gets interpreted so many different ways depending on who you talk to, and I don't know why we can't get and you being a lawyer, you might see this differently than I do, but a interpretation of what exactly does the Second Amendment say?
With just this week, apparently the Supreme Court has decided not to hear, at least there's apparently 6 or 7 states that have made some type of assault weapon ban. And as I understand it, they're worded differently, but if a weapon has one indicator of an assault weapon, or in some cases it is a limitation on the magazine or clip, if they have defined assault weapons in different ways, that has been appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has in a sense made a decision that is constitutional in that they decided not to hear it. Yeah. Now, there's people who would make the argument, well, they decided not to hear it because they're not a full Supreme Court. Yeah. They've decided not to hear it because they're split 4-4. But in a sense, that is the answer to that question, or to part of the question is that at this point, it's constitutional as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, or as far as some federal court of appeals is concerned, that you can ban assault weapons. And to go further, if you're talking about the problem, if you look at the Newtown shooting, if you look at the recent Orlando shooting, if you look at the shootings that happened in California, where the married couple shot a whole bunch of people.
Right.
If you look at those, anybody with any common sense would say, what is a common denominator we can find in those shootings to try to cure the problem in the future? And it is not that it was done by Muslim people. It was not that it was done by Muslim terrorists necessarily. It was not that it was necessarily done by people that you could have predicted their mental illness. The one common denominator in those mass shootings, along with the one that happened in a theater, I think that was in Colorado recently, is an assault weapon that had a 30-round clip. And I think it's just common sense to begin the discussion right there.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nelson County hasn't had that problem yet. I don't know. You may have seen it, and we just don't know about it as far as any assault weapons going on. But what's the weapon of choice primarily when you're in court? What is a crime, and what's people usually use around here?
It's the same thing they've always used. And, they've got most of them, it's anywhere from a rusty old pistol that's handed down in the family, or a rifle that's handed down, yeah. Or in I guess more modern drug type crimes, is some of the younger crowd and the inner city crowd is. They're using pistols, they're using semi-automatic pistols, but there's not and those crimes have always happened, and those crimes are probably always going to happen. You're not going to be able to address those necessarily, or pass any laws that I know of that's going to cure that. Now, many of the prosecutions and many of the prosecuting agencies, specifically the U.S. Attorney's Office and the local Commonwealth attorneys throughout the state, there's 57 of us, have all pretty much made the decision that if there is a gun involved in a violent crime, we're going to let whichever jurisdiction that can make the most severe penalty for that crime, we will let them take that particular case. So in other words, there's some cases where the penalty may be more severe in federal court, and we'll try to get the federal courts or the federal prosecutors to take that case. If the penalty is more severe in state court, then they will let us take that case. And it just depends on a case-by-case basis based on what the person's background is and all. But I think we all need to concentrate on, and the law is set up where if a weapon is used, a deadly weapon is used, the penalty is going to be more severe. Mm-hmm. Even in the cases of burglary, if someone breaks into a property, in most cases a residence, and they're armed with a weapon when they go in, it's a much higher penalty than in fact if they just go in not armed with the weapon. And in fact, burglary in the first degree in Kentucky involves if they are armed with a deadly weapon when they go in, or while they're in there, if they pick up the homeowner's weapon, or if they steal the homeowner's weapon and they go out with it, the penalty is higher than if they didn't have a weapon. And we try to prosecute those cases and get the higher penalty just to be a deterrent against people doing that. And the same thing with drug cases. If anyone has or uses a deadly weapon in conjunction with growing marijuana or selling drugs, then there is basically a multiplier or additional penalty put on for that. Because obviously the legislature believes that if you're involved in drug activity already, you should expect that the police are going to show up at some point, and it makes it a more dangerous situation for everybody. So as prosecutors, we try to prosecute those cases, give a priority to stiffer penalties in cases involving deadly weapon.
Well, as a prosecutor, as Commonwealth attorney, obviously something drove you in the direction. I know you've been an attorney for many years, and probably on both sides of the issues on many kinds, but now as a prosecutor, you're upholding you're for the people, I guess.
Well, we try to be.
Well, I mean, that's who you represent. You represent the people in court, because what drives you to do that? I mean, is there some overriding ambition that makes you want to do that?
Well, I think most people want to try to do the right thing and help society, and I think you have a certain feeling for that. I was a defense attorney for 13 years. I enjoyed that. I enjoy making sure that people's rights are being protected. But as a Commonwealth's attorney, it is our job not just to prosecute people, but to try to make sure that people's rights are protected. So, it's our job to try to make sure that not just that we necessarily hand out the stiffest penalty we can, or even hand out a stiff penalty in every case. It's to hand out a stiff penalty in the cases where they deserve that. Right. And if somebody deserves a break, then we obviously try to do that. And we've been very fortunate in our circuit to have a drug court that, I'll be honest, when it first started, I was a little hesitant about it, and one of my cohorts calls it in another county not close to here, calls it the Hug a Drug Thug program, which, and some of the prosecutors saw it that way, I think, to start out with. But it's been a very good program. We were, when it first was introduced to us, we had the folks from Hardin County come over and talk to us. And when they got through giving a presentation, I asked them, what is your success rate? Because the program lasts for 2 years, or their program did, and that's generally what we try to do. And they said 26%. And I said, you mean to tell me that you've got 4 people working on this, and your success rate is only 26% out of basically 25 to 30 people in the program? Yeah. And they said, yes, unfortunately, that's it. But the fact of the matter is, if you save one person, and if you save one bad drug crime, and certainly if you can try to save as many as you can, it's worth doing.
Yeah, 26% actually sounds high to me.
Well, and essentially, we're going back to the gun violence. If you passed any kind of a gun law to limit, for instance, and my personal view is, I see no reason to have 30-round clips. I think if we went back to what the law was under Reagan, and certainly up until the Bush administration, where a semi-automatic weapon was limited to 10 shells, and certainly that's what I grew up with. Obviously, we didn't have any gun with 10 shells for that matter. But I think that's a reasonable thing, because if you save those extra 20 people just one time in the history of the United States, that's 20 people's lives that go on and affect other people. So essentially, it's worth it to make the effort in the drug cases to try to save anybody that you can. And we oftentimes we will try to, if anybody can get into a drug program, if they can get into counseling. And time after time, we have parents come and beg us to prosecute their kids if you can just put them into some type of a program.
Yeah.
Parents and grandparents both, they say, please, help us out what you can. And
don't let them off easy.
No, and that's our job, and there are, sometimes you can help people and sometimes you can't, and sometimes you have parents that, think you didn't do the right thing, but, we've I've been doing this now 30 some years, I hate to say how long it's been, but, after a while you get a feel for what you think is the right thing, and you try to do the right thing. That's all you can do.
Well, like I said, you see a lot of things every day, and you deal with an element of people that that's it's not the cream of the crop, I guess you would say. So it's got to put a lot of stress on you when you go home at night. Is there a way to turn this off, or?
Well, I used to think that the older you got, the easier to turn it off. I'm not so sure that's the case anymore. I think the stress weighs on you more when you get older. I've always been very healthy. This year, all at once, I've started having back problems. I've started having acid reflux. I'm starting to have gout problems. All these problems I never had before. I'm starting to think that maybe it is related to the stress. But if I can get out in the countryside on the weekends, and I have a farm I go to, I try to get away from it some. But there's if you didn't let it stress you some, and if you don't have your thoughts into it all the time, that I don't think you're doing your job.
When you look back, I mean, what bothers you more? Is you knew somebody was guilty, you just couldn't prove it, or you got somebody convicted that you thought, well, maybe there was a benefit of the doubt. What would bother you? What bothers you more on a case like that?
I can truly say that I've never seen a jury trial that I thought somebody was found guilty, that they were not guilty. There may have been cases where, somebody pled guilty on a plea agreement that, we really worked hard on, and maybe, somebody else would have given them a better plea agreement than we did. I can't say that there's any of those that I feel bad about at all, though.
Yeah.
If anything, our system is designed to make sure that 100 people go free rather than one person be found guilty who is actually innocent. And I think the system works that way. And as I said, we've got unsolved murders going back to some we're looking at now in the late, obviously before I even was practicing law.
Is this something you're still looking into, the cold cases?
Yes, there's cold cases. There's cold cases that we're looking at. Every month we review certain cold cases, and there are 2 or 3 that are just right on the burner.
New DNA evidence and things like that maybe they didn't have back then, or how do you do this?
You look for anything you can,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's DNA, sometimes it's finding witnesses you didn't know before. There are new and better DNA tests coming out all the time. People think that the DNA test is one test solves everything.
On television, it takes less than an hour.
Well, I know, and we have that problem whenever we go to pick a jury. One of the first things I ask them voir dire is, how many people watch NCIS or Law and Order, and they raise their hands. How many of you here think that the Nelson County Sheriff's Office has a big van that pulls up and a bunch of people jump out in white coats and start picking up evidence, and can even take a fingerprint out of the air when somebody was there 6 hours before? And people will look at you and laugh, but the fact of the matter is, people believe that stuff on television. They really think that.
Well, I've heard him over and over on certain cases. They'll say, surely there's something.
Yeah, and it just doesn't happen that way. And majority of cases get solved by same thing that's always solved cases: leg work and footwork and questioning people, finding who saw what, finding who said what, and keep going until you find that. Now, there have been some great strides in DNA, but what a lot of people don't realize is not everything can be tested for DNA, and If the test is going to destroy, for instance, a little piece of hair or something, if it's going to destroy that sample, the defendant may have a chance to have his own test of that. If it's going to destroy it, the court has to decide how that gets taken care of. Is it okay to destroy the only sample, and which laboratory are going to use? And does the defendant or the purported defendant, even if you don't know who it is yet, do they have a right to have a public defender there to watch that test to make sure it goes right? So there's a lot of those issues that people just normally don't see that happen. And everybody thinks, well, there ought to be fingerprints in every case. I can count on one hand the cases in my career that have been solved by fingerprints. There's less than 5, I'll say my prosecuting career, less than 5 cases in over 20 years that have been solved by fingerprints. It just doesn't happen. We've been in this room for a while now, and we've touched things. If they tried to take fingerprints, they probably couldn't get it. You just don't get fingerprints like people think you do. And police try every time, and they do a good job of it sometimes, and it does work occasionally. But
so an eyewitness, a smoking gun, or somebody out here in the general public that knows something that maybe they don't think they know, but a good call to tell people.
Absolutely. We've got, obviously, there's some very high-profile cases going on right now, and I can't really talk about that, but I can tell you that there is evidence coming in I won't say every day, every week, that is helping out in investigating these cases.
As a Commonwealth's attorney, do you get involved with the investigation part of it, or you just wait till somebody brings it to you?
In majority of cases, we wait until they bring it to us. Now, the cases involving homicides, we'll oftentimes go to the scene. One of the recent cases involving homicide, usually the police will call me and we'll go there, and actually the high profile cases last 3 or 4 years have gone to all those. And there's a new piece of equipment that was used in one of the recent cases a couple years ago that the state police used, and it basically, they set it up like a pod or whatever, and that's not what they call it, but in the middle of the room, and it's a camera that takes a 360 degree view of everything in the room, and uses a laser to measure everything in the room. So when you do go to trial, you can put that on a screen and point out to the jury. That was the first time it had been used in Nelson County, and actually it had only been used in Kentucky a few times. Kentucky has one of the machines.
I saw that on NCIS.
So, I went out with when the detectives, actually they had roped everything up and waited for that machine, and when they, so I went in with them when they went in to check the evidence to see that machine work. It's very interesting. There are a lot of new things coming out that helps in cases.
Yeah. Well, Terry, we do appreciate you coming in here. I know, like I said, you got a job that you see the world a little differently than a lot of us don't want to see. I mean, you're seeing some things that and out there and doing what needs to be done to get crime off the street, and hopefully you're very successful at it, because hopefully making a safer county, a safer place to live.
Well, I appreciate that. We try to do the best we can. I have some excellent assistant prosecutors. We have some excellent investigators in the county. We have actually recently had the assistance of investigators from outside our county that are helping us, and federal investigators that have proved very, very helpful. And we appreciate the assistance they've given us. And I have a wonderful support staff, and so I have been extremely fortunate to have the court system that we have. We have an excellent judiciary we work with, and over the years we've had just an excellent court system and an excellent support in the whole county to do my job, and I certainly appreciate that.
All right, well, Terry, go ahead, the Commonwealth's attorney here in Nelson, and what other counties you have?
Nelson, LaRue, and Hart County.
Nelson, LaRue, and Hart County. So we appreciate you being here, appreciate what you're doing, and good luck out on the farm and relaxing on the weekends.
Well, thank you very much. Good to talk to you.
All right, thanks a lot. You stick around, we got a lot more to come here on Community Focus here on Channel 6 TV. We'll be back right after a few messages from our sponsor.